Right now is the perfect time to be preparing for the expansion in New World if you want to get ahead or make gold. We're going to look at the items that you either want to be buying or gathering right now. Let's jump in and talk about it. So how you prepare comes down to what you think is going to happen in the expansion. I'm going to tell you what I personally think, and I'm going to tell you why. We know the gear score is going up. The question you need to ask yourself, what do you think it's going up to? If you think it's going up to 650, then you need to act differently than if you think it's going up to 700. And I'll explain why. Now, I think it's going up to 700 because in the latest dev update, the Balance of Power update, they basically told us that we're going to get a new tier of these. So at this point, it's 300, you get an extra thing. And then at 250, you get an extra thing. We basically were told we're going to have one presumably at 350. Now it might be that actually all of these are getting squashed and they're just going to add ones in between like at 125 or something, but I'm guessing that we're going up to 350. To me, that implies gear score 700. Now I sort of think that might also give us an extra couple of levels, maybe we're going up to level 70 as well, but gear score 700 would give us an extra 30 stats, and therefore I think it would make sense to have the extra level. Now, why is that important? If we're going up to 650, then everything that is tier 5 will actually still be useful, but if we're going up to 700, then it's likely we're getting tier 6. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about when it comes to tiers, I'm talking about the items like these. So if I have a look in my inventory, and I have a look at something like Umbral Shards, they're tier 5. The Gypsum, that's tier 5. The gear here is also tier 5. The resources, tier 5. So basically, if you think we're going up to 650, then you can sort of stockpile some of these tier 5 resources like Umbral Shards, like your Gypsum Orbs. But personally, I think we need to look a little bit past that. I think we're getting a new tier. Now that has some major impact. Everything is on the table here. It's going to drastically change the game basically and what you want to be gathering. There's quite a lot of things that you could do in preparation, and I think the one that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards first, and it's actually the one that I'm doing, is simply to look at materials. And what I'm talking about are things like these: orichalcum ingots, infused leather, infused silk. And then the question you might be asking yourself, like, let's say you want to get hold of that. Should you buy that right now? Like if I have a look at orichalcum ingots, they're going for about 12 gold. Now, the reason I actually don't really recommend buying this is because this is a gamble. The main way you actually want to prepare for the expansion is probably to have raw gold. Raw gold, you're pretty sure will be useful in the expansion. Everything else is pretty much a gamble. For example, gold will have a 1-to-1 ratio. You know, 10 gold now is worth 10 gold in the expansion. There's no doubting that. Whereas let's say you bought one orichalcum ingot, you're basically saying you think that this price is going to go up. And you know what? I'm actually not sure about that. If we're going to get tier 6 mats, you might think, well, tier 5 will be used in it. And you're probably right. But you know what else we might be getting alongside tier 6? We'll probably then get better tools, better items. We might get more nodes in any new zone or something like that. So weirdly, orichalcum, even though it's rare now, may actually decrease in price. It could obviously do the opposite and it might go up in price. There's no way of knowing. All of this is a pure gamble. What isn't a gamble is gold. The more gold that you can get, the better. So pick and choose. You can either buy some, you can go out and there and farm it. I'm personally farming it because what else am I doing right now? Now, I know a lot of you will be thinking, what about Asmodeum, Phoenix Weave and Runic Leather and stuff like that? Now, here I differ from a lot of people. I actually think it's riskier to start storing those mats. Like if you have some Phoenix Weave is tier 5. If we are going up to gear score 700, if we're going to get tier 6, then it's very likely that Phoenix Weave might not be the in material. Now, it could be a situation where you actually need this new material and you need Phoenix Weave. We don't really know about that. I am led to believe, I think I heard it on a stream, I'm not going to actually reveal the source here, it's a little bit sensitive, that Amazon, they like the idea of cooldowns. So whether or not we'll get a new cooldown in the expansion, or whether or not it'll just be this material plus something else, I obviously don't know. Now, the reason I'm not storing Phoenix Weave, and I actually think it's better to store Infused Silk, is that it's sort of a bit easier to convert Infused Silk into Phoenix Weave rather than like turning Phoenix Weave into Infused Silk, because that's not currently possible. So there is a chance that if you have Phoenix Weave, Asmodeum, etc., that you can't turn it back into a material that you'll want for the next level of Infused Silk, which may be like super duper Infused Silk. So personally, I'm going just with the raw tier 5 mat rather than the legendary version. I also think that if we do get an expansion PTR, then I will have maybe like 30 days to convert everything that I possibly can into Phoenix Weave if Phoenix Weave is is the one that is relevant. So for me, I'm going Infused Silk over Phoenix Weave, but you can pick what you like. And Infused Silk may actually drop in price. It might not be worth actually holding on to because it might be easier to get. You know, the stations will possibly have an extra tier. Your tools will have more tier on it, so they'll be easier to get. There might be more nodes. It's very, very questionable to store mats. However, that is personally what I'm doing. And that applies across the board. I would personally think about not actually cutting your gems. You know, you can do the thing where you combine gems into a next tier. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a situation where it's like a legendary gem or legendary rune glass. For moats, I think moats are actually a safe bet. I actually think the core version of moats will maybe be valuable even so. They have a lot of value just in general. So farming moats might be a nice little sneaky way of consistently making gold that may actually go up in price. But yeah, pretty much every mat that is tiered where you need some of the lower level to get to the higher value, that is possibly worth storing. Now there's actually some juicy things beyond that you might want to consider. So if we are getting tier 6, what does that mean? Well, it might mean that the professions are going to go from 200 to 250. All these trade skills, they may be getting like stopped at 200, going up to 250. And I would guess that aptitude would basically get reset. And then maybe when you get to 250, it'd put you at aptitude, whatever you were. So I'm aptitude cooking 8, for example. Maybe when I get to 250, I suddenly become 250 plus 8. Or maybe they'll just reset it. Either way, there are some things you can do to level up some of your professions once the expansion goes live, and you can prep it now. So one thing that you could store, for example, will be the ores and the pollens and stuff like that. If you've not seen these, for example, this unusual ore here, what you can actually do with this is use it at one of the refining stations and you get mining XP or gathering XP, etc. For example, here I have some unusual pollen and I can convert this into harvesting XP. Now you can use this for your aptitude, but I personally think it's worth holding on to these because let's say we go to harvesting 250, you might be able to use these to get a sneaky little head start, and that's on the gathering resources. So I'm personally storing them rather than using them. And there's actually another option that was added in season 2 which you might want to do, and that is your faction vendor. Now one thing you could do with your faction vendor is just make sure that you are completely capped out at everything before the expansion goes live. Maybe you want to have max tokens, maybe you want to have, you know, max reputation, or that most people have the reputation, because we may get an extra tier of this as well. But what's in the alchemist level right now, well, it's actually in every level, but let's just have a look at the alchemist ones, in that there are these here, these grand logging masteries, and what you basically do is you buy them. So let's say I buy, for example, this mining one. I'm going to buy it right now, and then if I was to use that, I would get mining XP. However, you can see Weasley is tier 4, so there might be a tier 5 version of this. But basically, if the expansion goes live and mining goes up to 250, maybe I can just pop all of these and get my mining up really quickly. It's also worth noting that you can actually be affected by the boosters with these. So if we do go up to 250, it might be worth basically having some of these season boosters. So I said season boosters, I meant gathering boosters. You'd pop that, then you'd open all of those. Boom, your XP will be very nice to start with. It'd be a nice little advantage over other people. So that's how you can get ahead with gathering if the professions go up to 250. There's a little bit of a way you could get ahead of refining, but I don't necessarily think it's worth it because the storage of the materials will just get absolutely chaotic. Basically, in some of my storage, what I'm actually doing is I'm storing star metal and orichalcum. In theory, you could store all of the mats, like iron and all the way up, but this is the way of getting my best bang for my buck for my weight. And it's basically every 2 star metal, you need 8 orichalcum. So basically it's a 4-to-1 ratio, which I think that's approximately, if not exact. So the idea being here, when we go live, I'm going to go overhead and smelt these. I'll get a little boost on other people. Will it be worth doing? Probably not, because look how much resources that takes up. In theory, this is only about 436 orichalcum, which you can see takes up pretty much a full storage, whereas if I look at 584, it doesn't. So I don't know about that one. I think ultimately I might end up just smelting them just so I have the tier 5s just for the space. But until then, I'm going to keep it like that. And there's loads of things you can do. For example, in some of my storage areas, I think weirdly in Weaver's Fen, I have some wire weave. I just pretty much put a buy order on there and was like, well, let's just have 10,000 of it. It's not that expensive. I did a buy order simply so I didn't have to become overweight and walk over to my storage. This is a pretty solid bet. I know it's tier 5, but they did say that we're having 1 tier. It might be that we're going to get a new tier, which would be a little bit upsetting, but again, these are gambles. All of this is a gamble. So we've spoken about mats, we've spoken about professions. What else can you do? I mean, there's a couple of housekeeping things that you could do. You could clear out all your storage, for example. Don't salvage your items yet, like your armor and your weapon. Wait until transmog, and then it'll probably be worth doing or not worth doing. We'll know more information when we know. One thing I am a little bit guilty of, I don't know if there's going to be an expertise system or something, but it might be worth making sure that all of your items are expertise 625. Weirdly, I play the Sword and Shield a lot. It's a little bit shocking to me that I've not yet bothered to actually get that up to 625. I personally would spend the umbrals, take an item, get it to 625 if you have them. There's quite a lot of items that I need to do that with. And there's a couple of extra things that are just sort of maybe not in any category. For example, if I have a look at my inventory, I said that in a really weird way. So if you're not aware, material, you can go to a crafting station and craft replicas of stuff from a specific expedition. It would be a little bit weird to me if they kept this, but it might be possible that they're going to upscale something like barnacles. Therefore, it might be worth doing these dungeons and actually storing this. There's no tier on this, but it might be possible. Don't spend it basically unless you need to. Don't know why anybody would be spending it now, but you could go ahead and farm it if you wanted as well. Another little thing while I'm here, and I must say, I think maybe Dukesoft was right on this one and I didn't realise. So Dukesoft basically said, I think in one of his videos, that the green patterns are better value. I think he was talking about the spring event, but whatever. Basically that the green value ones are a better long-term bet than the orange patterns. And I think that makes sense now. Because the green patterns use your crafting score and basically work like timeless shards. Worth noting, by the way, that actually timeless shards, if I actually have any, well, I don't, but basically timeless shards are tier 5, so maybe they're not going to be useful either. But the green patterns don't have any tier on them, so it's possible that these will be good value. With the patterns that are the 600 gear score ones, they literally say gear score 600. Now, assumingly that they'll do patterns that are gear score 700 at some point, but I don't think they're going to automatically scale up that 600 pattern into a 700 pattern. I think you're going to need new patterns. And if you have named items like Fury or whatever right now, there's no way on earth, I think, where they're just going to turn your 625 item into a 700 gear score. I don't think that's happening, so I wouldn't personally stress about that. It may also be worth just stockpiling your salt. I think there's a chance that the PvP reward track might get reset. They did sort of mention it in a video, but not really. They said not right now. There's a couple of extra things as well. So for example, the mutator reward caches, if you do not need the shards, it might be worth clinging on to these, because yes, while it does say difficulty 10, and we probably know that the expeditions are going to get squashed from having 10 mutations to probably like 4 or 5 or something like that, there's a slim chance that these might give you some of whatever's new in the expansion. So I mean, if you have them and you don't need the shards, maybe hold on to them. I don't think they're going to let shards be useful. I think they're actually just going to kill them. Now, I'm not saying there won't be a replacement, but there's people who've got like probably literally millions of shards. I don't think they're going to be like, you guys have an insane advantage, crack on. I think it's going to be more of a reset than that. That's speculation on my part though, but the boxes could be useful. Another thing that I personally am doing, the aptitude boxes. Now, it might be completely worthless because maybe there's going to be an extra tier of these. Maybe they're just going to be completely worthless just in general, but I'm saving them. And if they are worthless and if I just get like the normal tier 5 stuff, then perfect, that's fine anyway. But if they maybe have some of the new stuff in it when it comes out, that'll be very, very nice. And you know what? Weight-wise, it's only 18. I'm pretty sure that the mats, when I open these, would be heavier than that. So I think that's just a cool thing to be doing anyway. Now, without knowing what is in the expansion, obviously, pretty much everything that I just told you might not be useful at all. It might be that we're not going to gear score 700. It might be that we're going to gear score 650. It might be that all of the little tricks that we're doing with these aptitude boxes and the harvesting and the ores and all that kind of stuff, maybe the rework will be so vast that they're actually going to be completely pointless. There's no way I can possibly know right now. If I was a betting man, I think we're going to gear score 700. I think we're going to have extra tiers. I think you're going to need like all new, pretty much everything, tools, etc. I think everything's going to need changing. But if you think it's going to 650, you think I'm wrong, then you can put your money where your mouth is, basically. You can buy Asmodeum if you like. You can buy all of the legendary mats. You can stockpile your Outpost Rush caches. Maybe these are actually going to be worth holding on to. I'm sort of just stockpiling mine because I can't be bothered managing the gear, but that's just because I'm lazy. The rest of my inventory is absolutely a nightmare. That's just because it's New World and it's always going to be like that. Although actually we think there's a new inventory system sort of on the way. There's that inventory 2 video that I think Dukesoft did. But either way, I still think it'll be a nightmare. If you think it's going to stay as tier 5, you think it's going to be like 650 or something like that, you know, The Outpost Rush patterns are fine. The Timeless Shard patterns are fine. Having as many Umbral Shards you can muster is probably fine. I think I would personally probably store the Gypsum rather than the Gypsum Orbs, but take your pick, it's not really a problem. Don't think I'd do the cast just in case, but you know, if you want to do that, do it. You know, there's stuff out there if you don't think we're going to gear score 700. One thing that I personally need to do is my trophies. So the trophies are actually staying in the game, we believe. So I really need to start farming like Banes and stuff like that to get all of my combat trophies, because all I ever did was I got to the middle tier, the basic ones rather than the major ones, and then I just sort of stopped. Apart from the worm, I actually try hard for the worm. But now that I know they're staying, I might as well go ahead and farm them. However, that's another thing. What might happen is you could go ahead and farm Banes right now. You could get your 3 trophies, and then in the expansion, do you know what? They might be way easier to get, and you might be like, oh, that was a waste of time. Everything is a bit of a gamble. But apart from one thing, I think one currency that we know isn't going to change or isn't going to change massively is this one right here. Gold is not going to change massively. Now, personally, I really hope they sort of devalue gold. I want to be able to get the gear and stuff more in-game rather than just buying it with gold. Weirdly, I think the reliance of New World on the player-driven economy has led to a lot of RMT in New World, and I would love to see it absolutely just be completely devalued. Now, that's a little bit harsh, I know, but I think it's actually good for the game. So, it's up to you. What do you believe? Who do you think is right? What do you think is right? You want to take that knowledge, take that belief, and start putting on bets. New World is a gamble, after all. Sadly, I think almost no matter what you do right now, everything apart from gold might devalue, and even gold might devalue, because that's just generally the way expansions work. The new stuff will be way more valuable than the old stuff, and the old stuff sort of devalues quite quickly. However, like day 1, day 2, day 3, the old stuff might be very, very expensive, so maybe you want to make gold, or maybe you just want to get ahead. I'm personally farming, but do whatever you want to do. A very long video, but there's quite a lot into this one. It sort of seems simple, right? How do I prepare for the expansion? Or I'll just go out and gather. Actually, there's a lot more to it than that. There's little sneaky things you can do with the harvesting and the pollen and all that kind of stuff that you may not have thought of. Let's see what we get when we get it. And I think we're going to start finding out in August. It's very, very exciting, even though most people don't realize it yet. It is going to be very, very exciting. Big shout out to my YouTube members, and if you want to come ahead and like watch me farm and talk about this day in, day out, then you can come ahead and follow me over on Twitch. Today I did some M10s. Most of the time I do Outpost Rush, farming, talking about gold, etc. It's a good time, and you do not want to miss it, or else you'll have to just deal with it. These were just lying on my desk, so whatever, don't judge me. Goodbye.